So what Spring Boot enables you to do is to build the back end of web applications, the back end of web applications where computations happen and then they are sent to the front end. So this communication basically is a communication, a to and fro, two-way communication. The the front end sends a request to the back end, and the back end processes a response and sends it back to the front end. So this happens through a medium called REST REST APIs. So the entire idea of you might have come across REST APIs. What it simply means is um, okay. In short, I'll put it. The short of it is basically API. I would cut the rest off for now. So API basically is application programming interface. Is a someone there? So API basically means application programming interface. It's a way one computer is able to interact with another computer. So this is basically a broad definition of it. It can be simplified further in our case to say a way where an application layer is designed to communicate with another layer. So in our case, the layer I'm referring to now is the back-end layer, the way it's able to communicate with the front-end layer. So this is made possible through APIs, application programming interface. And so to be able to do that, we talked about URLs, uniform resource locators. And so we're making something that looks like URL, which is what you I introduced URL to you guys in last class. So making use of that kind of thing in this during this period anyway. And to do that, I introduced guys to a bunch of um, request types, which is the get request type, the post request type, and there's delete request type. There's also the put request type. So without wasting much time, I'll be talking and talking. So I've already set up this project using start.spring.io. You already know how to use that. So if I use, you'll be making use of annotations extensively throughout Spring Boot. So you just have to learn as many annotations as you can because you'll be making use of annotations throughout Spring Boot classes. Now I've already set up this Spring Boot class. Okay, this wasn't here. I just created these two packages called I created these two packages called controller and the service. Okay, let me just remove this service. Let's make use of the essential one. Let's delete. So we're going to be making use of just this controller you're seeing here, package you're seeing here. So basically the controller, there are many, controller is basically just an aspect of the design pattern we are going to be using to create our project. So what happens with the controller is that's the point where we create our URLs. If a request is made into our application, that is the point where the request first hits. And just like every other aspect of the application, you make use of annotations. You make use of annotations extensively. Just to demonstrate one instance where we can make use of our annotations. Say we want to make a request to this our application to a URL that has, let's say, get name. So this is our URL. It will be annotated on top of our method. Let's say the method, what it returns is a string, and and the name of this is just get name, and all it does is to return what? Return what name could I use? Okay, let's say Ome. So this is what this method simply does. So what this method does is it returns a name called Ome. But to be able to let our Spring Boot know that uh, a call is going to enter here, that a request, that's the correct term now, is going to enter here, and that it should be ready for any request that is made with this kind of URL get name. We need to tell it to be ready by annotating with what's called at rest controller. So rest controller basically is to tell our Spring Boot application that what I already stated earlier, that call is going to be made into this class basically, and that if the call is having this extension gets name. So when building URL, there's a convention. Let me just stick to that for it to still work the way I did it before. So you use hyphen and to separate words. We don't use camel casing like I did before. So this is the system we're building for URLs. It's not that the other one wouldn't work. It's just a convention. So if we did something like this, give me 1 second. So if, give me a second please, since the line. Come on now, come on, come on, come on. Okay, let's just get back on waiting for it. So if you did something like this, anytime a request is made, it looks and checks the kind of request that is made, and then it determines uh, the rest kind of response to the cells again, including the server, and then you start it off manually. But in this case, the server is already embedded. So all I need to do to get this application running is to hit the play button here, as you would with your main. You'll be made to it. And of course, remember I told you that every application has its own port to listen to. So it's possible for me to be running plenty servers on this my laptop, but then each server is going to be listening at different points. Each server is going to be listening at different points. So this thing you're seeing here is my server that is starting up. Can you see it? Are you guys even following? Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so this is my server that is running now. Every server has a particular port that is listening to. We can set our port. We can set the port we want our server to be listening to whatever we like. But by default, uh, our application should be running on port 8080, which is what's highlighted here. So which is what's highlighted here. So if I am to make a call to my server, which is running on port 8080, to this extension now, to this URL, what you can see is local port 8080. By default, there's a forward slash. This is the entry point into our program, in the sense that for us to get what's happening inside here, for this string to be returned, I have to pass in this kind of extension, this kind of URL you're seeing here. I have to pass it in, and then it's able to get whatever is being returned here. If you are building a bigger application, we're not just going to return this string here. We're going to fetch information from database basically. Most of the time, it will be a call to database. So we're not just going to return raw stuff here. Say for example, you log into your account with your login details. What's supposed to happen is that those your login details will enter using the URL into the application. Then it processes whatever it needs to process and then returns everything concerning you as a person. So that's how it's supposed to be. If Ada logs into an application, it processes everything it needs to process, goes to the database, fetch whatever it needs to fetch, and return every detail concerning Ada. If Jennifer logs in via the same URL, because it's going to be the same URL, it won't be different for each person. It will take in those details you passed in. It goes to the service layer. What the layer we are on now is the controller. So basically, I think we have the controller, we have the service, and then we have the repository. So these three layers basically are the what makes up a Spring Boot application, the core aspect of Spring Boot application. These three layers you're seeing here. So it goes from the controller. Controller is the entry point, like I said. That's where the information, the get, the post, everything happens. And then it goes straight to the service. Service is where the business logic lies. Service is where the computation happens. Service is where it does processing, basically. Then the repository. The repository has to do with the database. Database, basically. That's what the repository entails. So the controller is where the request hits. It goes to the service. The business logic lives here. It does all the computation it needs, and it sends the request to the database. So it's basically this way. It goes. Okay, let me line it up. So it goes from the controller to the service and then to the repository and fetches whatever details it needs to fetch. And then it returns from the repository and goes to where? The service. And then service sends it back to the controller. Basically, this is how the flow happens in an application. The controller receives the request, the service processes the request and sends details to the database. From there, it goes back to from repository, it goes back to our database service layer, and then goes to the controller. And then it sends it to the front end. Then the front end determines how it needs to present it, and then it's being presented on the page, which every user sees, basically. Is there any question so far? Am I clear? Are we okay?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's fine. And I also posted an article. I expect you guys must have read it. There are two of them, video and article. So the video is one you do justice to by Monday. The article, did you read it? Who read it, please?
So I didn't finish it because today I was supposed to actually read the article today, but we had an impromptu online class this afternoon, so that was the reason why I didn't finish it.
Is it a school class?
So yes.
Okay. What about the other two? Bukola left. I can't see her. Has she left?
Yeah, I think she left.
Okay.
I did not do. I told you I glanced. I did not read it.
Okay, it's important that you guys. Yeah, it's actually important that you be going through all of this, and this is actually to aid our class. everything can be taught with not even cannot be. Everything will not be taught in class. It's not even possible. It's not possible. And with the effort you make on yourself, you get used to everything that you need to know. And by going through the articles or whatever I post, it will aid the class that follows it all. So I know what to respond to in the classes. But now you didn't go through it, so I would have to start discussing about that now. So well, that's fine. The second this one was on JSON. JSON. So basically, JSON is a way to represent information in computer programming. JSON is a way to represent information in computer programming, and it's an alternative to. Sorry, someone is joining. So it's an alternative to XML. XML is the closing tag for group ID using XML format. The extension is in here is XML. But there are many other ways. HTML is one of it. Text is one of it, But JSON is also another way of doing that. So basically, what happens in JSON is it's more like a hash map, which has a key side and a value side. So if you went through the document, you would see this kind of thing. You see the key side, which is one on the left, it has name, and the one on the right, it has the value. The same for this employee ID. The left side is the employee ID, and the right side is the actual ID, the value. So basically, JSON is a way of representing information, like I said, having key and value sides, and it's basically to JavaScript objects. But we're not talking about JavaScript anyway. So when you see information in two quotes like this, opening and closing quotes, it represents that it's going to be of type string. The same thing here is going to be of type string. The ID, the ID is expected to be of type long, which is what you're seeing here, and the present, that's if the employee is present, is going to be of type boolean, basically. If I were to create an object out of this thing, the way it is, because when you're creating a program, what you're going to be returning is not just going to be a string. It's mostly going to be JSON. So with that, let me do Chrome inspect. I don't know if any of you have gotten to this part of your web application. You can actually do a bunch of things related to programming in this part of browser. So if you right click, you go down to inspect, and that's what's loading here. So I don't know, my system is just slowing down this evening. Okay. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for. Okay, let me go to applications. All right. So you can see a bunch of information here. So every information you're seeing here is pertaining to this particular page we are on. It gives you information about this particular page you are on. And I'm trying to look for anyone that makes sense to us. And I can't even see. Many of the times it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. Well, let me not go far with that. So what I was going to do is to represent this particular thing in Java object. And if I were to do this, something like this for 1 second, first of all, I have to create a different package to tell it that what this package is going to carry is entities. So if I create this, I would say entity, and let's say this is employee. Okay, and string of it has type string that returns a value of string as well. So what I could do is private string name, and then the second part is the employee ID. What I could do is private string employee ID, and the other part is present, private boolean and present. So basically, this is a way to for employee ID. This one returns the employee ID. Then I have is present. This one returns whether the person is present. Then I have my setters. Every of these things you're seeing here. So that's what I mean by my getter setter. This one you should be familiar with already. So what I was going to demonstrate is that it's possible for me not to do every of these things. From this line 12 to the 34, it's possible for me not to type all of these things. And Spring Boot has provided us a way to avoid all of it. So from beginning to from this get name, get employee ID and is present, this annotation handles that one basically. This annotation you're seeing here, getter, and it's coming from the dependency I just installed now. If I look through my dependency, you can see something called Lombok. So this dependency is what I'm talking about. Remember, this our pom.xml is where all of the dependencies we need live. So these dependencies, some developers have already taken it upon themselves to remove that particular idea of having to manually type our getter and setter, and simply create a project and call it project Lombok, whereby all we needed to do was just to annotate this getter, and underground it provide these three things for us. So what I can do is to remove it, knowing that this first one, getter, is going to handle it for me. So it's possible for me in the future to do something like get name and it will still work, even though you're not seeing that method here. And then this setter, I've also used the annotation setter. So what it will do for me is to remove these three methods here and set it underground for us. Does it make sense to us? Does it make sense, please? I need response here. Are you guys still there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we are here.
Okay, that's fine. You have to start typing every of those things I just deleted. And if here in my controller I needed to do my I needed to set the name and everything, what I could do is employee dot get name. You see all of those suggestions are there. Get name, set employee ID, get employee ID, set present, is present or set present. Even though if you come here, all of those fields are not there. But because we use this annotation, getter and setter, they are there on the background. So if I wanted to, and also for the constructor, I could use another annotation called all apps constructor. All apps constructor. So what it does is it creates a constructor. You know how constructor usually is now. Public, where is it? Employee, where is it? What is it? Okay, public employee, and then it takes in string name, string employee ID, and then string, no, boolean. The last one is boolean present, and then I will start doing what is this dot name equals name, this dot employee ID equals employee ID, this dot present equal to present. So this is our constructor. So this Lombok I just installed, the dependency, has given me the ability to not start typing this thing manually as it is here, and simply use this annotation on top here. As you can see it, if I remove it, it should be fine now, and simply use this annotation and everything is fine. So if I come here, although you can't see that constructor, I still have the ability to supply all of those fields. The first one is name. Let's call it okay. Let's say hello, and the other one is the employee ID. And what's the employee ID? What's our employee ID? The value you're seeing here is not having quotes. So what I wrote here in my distance shouldn't be. So this thing should change to long. It's always advised to use long and not integer. The idea and the reason is that you don't know how far our employee ID could extend to. If I used integer and it reaches the maximum value than integer. So what I could do here is to pass my ID. Come on. No, not this. Jack. Alright. And then if I come, I already have my name and then Jack. And then let's say the present, it has the value of false. So as it is now, I've created our employee. So I may want to return. I may want. So if this thing stops compiling now, it's to give us error, and that's expected because what we are returning here is of type employee. It's supposed to be of type employee, which it is. But what we stated on top here is of type string. So we change this to type employee. So if I start my application, if I start my server again, what I could do is to hit this top here and then click. Alternatively, what I can do is to click here and then tell it to stop and rerun. So because of these changes, I would need to start my server again and rerun it. All right. So you give it some time. It usually takes time. So, and that's because my server is not fully started yet. It's still spinning up. So the server needs to be running before you're able to access our application. So basically, this is my application running. This is my application, my Java application that is running now. Okay, it has finished running, and then let me try to access it again now. I'm trying to access it again. It's giving me the same error page. Could anyone guess the reason why this is so? Are you even there? Are you guys there? Could you guess the reason why it's giving me the error page? Even though our server is fully up and running now, but yet I'm still getting the error page. Any answers? Bukola, Jennifer, and Ada. Any answers? Just tell me, don't know if you don't know. So I know that you guys are even there.
I don't really understand though, but maybe with time I will.
Jennifer just left. Bukola, are you there? Yeah, I'm saying that this page is giving me the error page. It's giving me the error page, even though my server is up and running. Could you guess the reason for that, Jennifer or Bukola? All right, so the reason is, if you look here, it's telling me that my port is running on My server is running on port 1990, and that's because I changed it here and told it the server should be running now on port upon 1990. But what's specified here is still on 8080. So what I needed to do was to change it, and then it should return me the object of employee. So this detail you're seeing here, everything you're seeing here now. So we have okay, the zero got chopped off, and that's because we are working on decimal. So it's normal for it to remove the preceding zero. So you can see here, this is what. So basically, this is of type JSON. What you're seeing here is of type JSON. And like I said, is a way of representing information. So this is basically the power of APIs. It enables communication between two application layers or between two computers. So the communication now is, if you have to visualize it, the communication is coming from this URL and it's going to do plenty processing. We just returned the employee that we created here. We created it here and then we returned it. In real applications, it will make call to the to it will send message to the service layer as you're seeing it here, and then to the DB, and then it fetches it back, and it's going to be displayed in our front end. So this is just a simplified way of how JSON and APIs how they work hand in hand. So this was what I just wanted to demonstrate in this class, and it would have been a lot more helpful if you went through the article. But I expect that you understand it. So not to prolong this class, it's 1 hour. It's 1 hour, almost 1 hour. If you have any question, Jennifer, you said you had a question before I end the class, or regarding what we taught so
Yes.
far. And also, yeah,
Not
please
regarding
proceed.
what,
Yeah.
not regarding this.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. As a back end developer,
Yeah.
normally I know that front
But
end
wait,
developer.
give me 1 second. If Aja and Bukola have any question regarding what we've done before we talk another one. Or if there's no question, maybe we can proceed.
I don't have.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Jennifer can proceed.
Okay, sir. So I was saying that as a back end developer, I know that they deal with like the database and all those stuff.
Yes.
Then the front end deal with the user interface.
Exactly.
So I know like a front end developer will like design the website, how it works, all those login pages, all those about page, all those ones.
Yes.
Then how does sir?
Yeah, continue here.
So how does the back end developer get the files, like get the front end work to like to start working from the back end? I don't understand. I've been trying to understand that too, but I've not really asked anybody because I know that the tools for the for the design is quite different from the one for the back end. I don't know. Is it that if that the back end is going to work on something, the person has to start redesigning it again, or there's a way to zip the file and unzip it and all do all those stuff. I don't know. I'll just ask them.
I really don't quite. Is it that you're saying? Are you trying to say like how like? Can you just put it in something that I can understand better?
Okay, I know
Yeah.
that the front end
Yeah.
work is to design the website,
Yes.
while
But
the
it's
back
not
end
particularly
is
to
to do
design.
the
It's not particularly to
that.
design. The design is for the UI UX people. So the front end person,
Yes.
yes. So the front end person just implements what they designed, like code it
Okay.
using CSS system and the rest. Yeah. Continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like the back end that works with database and all those
Yes.
things,
Yes.
how do they like work on the same project?
Yeah, actually, it's possible. That's why it's called a team. It's called a team. Everything is planned out. So the back end people, they don't work alone. Actually, they don't work alone. They come together with the front end. Otherwise, if you do it this and distinctly, if you do separate works, you may end up doing something, and then the other person ends up doing something different. So they work hand in hand. So the idea is they come before the project starts and establish what's what they need to establish, and those things are, let's say, the common points at which they meet. So what the front end person basically designs or implements is a way, the user interface, a way to allow the user send information. And the backend person, basically, what they do is to provide a means, a way, provide a means because they already expect this kind of request to be coming in. So that's the idea. They expect this kind of request to be coming in. So what they do is to they fashion out a way to capture that request. And what I mean is that if, for example, someone is creating a user profile with an application, what they are supposed to do is to provide their name, their phone number, and every other detail. So the backend person, what they do is to provide a way and when I say a way, is they provide. What I mean is that they provide an object to capture the name, the phone number, and every other detail. So if, for example, this is our application, because the backend person already knows that this information are expected. So what they do is to create an object that carries the name, that carries the phone number, as you're seeing here now. But in this case, it's the name and the employee ID and every other details. So based on that, it's processing whatever it needs to process for that particular entity, for that particular user. So the front end and back end person, their job now is to what they are basically what they need to establish is communication between themselves and know the kind of response and the kind of request to be sent. So it goes the other way around, not just not just for the backend to establish the kind of request. He also designs a kind of response that will be sent to the front end, and then now this front end person also has to provide a kind of mechanism to accept the response, this kind of response that is coming from the backend, and then he implements a way to display to the user. So the line between the front end and the back end comes with response and request. That's just where the connection comes.
I
So
actually understand what you're saying, but like I think I didn't put my question in a way that you can understand it.
all right,
So let
all
me
right,
just use an example.
yes,
I know like front end they work with HTML, CSS, maybe JavaScript,
yes,
yes.
yes, yes,
Then the back end now that we are using Java, we are
yes,
using like Spring Boot to work.
exactly. Okay.
So how does the back end assess whatever is in the front end? How do they connect to that JavaScript, HTML, and CSS? Or I don't know. That's what I'm trying
Okay,
to say. How?
now the backend person doesn't have any business with that HTML, CSS, whatever. Do you understand this?
Yeah, yeah.
He has no form of business with anything regarding HTML, CSS, Chrome browser. He has no business with that. So his zone is just to process information that is coming to him and send back a response. That is all that is his business. That is just all. Do you get? You still don't get?
So like,
Okay.
yeah, I get what you are saying, but like now that we are using Spring Boot for this, how can we now connect the two files to make sure that like how can we connect it? Because I don't understand.
Okay,
I know
like
we are working on.
are you saying like in code?
Yes.
Okay, to do that, like you've heard of a okay. Let me not talk about full stack developer now. But full stack developer is basically one that does the front end and back end. There are those kind of persons, and so basically, to do that, the front end person sent a. You see this request you're seeing us sent to this particular URL. You're seeing it,
Yes,
bar.
sir.
So the front end person is now the one that makes the direct request to this URL. You're seeing us. That's what I mean. We are not going to no user. If this application is going to be launched now, the user is not going to access this URL directly. The front end guy is the one that's going to access this URL directly. So, and then essentially what I'm saying is that there will be two URLs for a particular endpoint that someone is trying to access. Let's say, for example, this YouTube now, this is YouTube. Now the user is able to directly access this particular URL. The way of seeing it for this particular video that is loading. So, or say for example, yes, for this particular video that is loading now, if I send a request, it goes to the application, to the front end side, and then carries, and then that request is sent to the backend URL. In our case, it's just this. So what I'm saying is that the user sends a request via the front end, and then based on that request, the front end person must have designed it so that and that request is now sent to the back end. In this case, is this URL now. So that based on information that is coming to this URL, it goes to the backend code and does whatever it needs to do. So that's just the connection between the front end and the backend person. The user doesn't directly connect to the backend. So the user connects to the front end, and then the front end must have already known the URL, in this case, which is the get name, to send whatever request that it needs to send to the backend. I don't know. I'm trying my best to answer your question. I don't know if this one's helping.
Yes, sir. Yes, it is.
Okay. It does. So essentially, in terms of code, if I were to run my front end application now, in my code where I designed the styling and everything, and then of course there's anchor tag. The anchor tag carries URL. The URL that I'll put there for the for for the request to be sent to the backend is going to be the URL for the backend. So for every particular request that is coming in from a user, it's good to say that it's okay to say that there are two URLs that account for that request. So the first, okay, let's come here now. Let me come here and say, if I click this share, as I click this share now, what I'm seeing, there's actually a particular URL, and if I hover over it, this thing should come up now. Okay, you're seeing this thing here now. As I hovered over this thing, sure you're seeing this URL. But just be looking here on this down left side. If I hover over this thing, are you seeing it?
Yes, sir. I can see it.
Here. So if I click it, this is the one me the user is seeing. If I click it, an action is triggered, and it sends whatever it needs to send to the back end. And a URL to access the back end is also provided. In our case here, the URL for the back end is this. But it's possible for us to test it on the front end because we are the owner of the application, so we can test whatever we need to test. But if we launch the application, we cannot access the back end directly like this. So if I come back to this, so if I come back, if I hit this thing, a request is sent. So the URL is seeing here is for the front end. A request is sent to the back end via a different URL, and it does whatever it needs to do, and then it returns again to the front end, sends whatever response it needs to send. So that's the communication flow between the front end and the back end. Is this clear? Any other question?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right. Ada and Bukola, are we good to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll be posting this video link again. Please do go through the videos. It will be helpful in further classes. I didn't even realize it was just one that I posted. So I'll post it again. You go. If I'm posting it on WhatsApp, then you go through it. That being said, I'll be ending. We should be ending in class